the main thing what an artist can add again is imagination. That means that by doing that he can show people who are involved in it. He can show that, or she can show that there is always another world possible. And this is very important. That there isn't a kind of fiction world. Of course, it's fiction, but he can present, or she can present it so convincing that people start to believe. At least what he or she does is by bringing fiction in a community is giving the possibility that people can use the position of fiction to look at their own reality. And this is a very important tool, I think, to become reflexive, etc. So it's what the sociologist Niklas Luhmann called second order observation. So you look at a different order to your own. And this is the only thing which can do this for us is the imagination. To do this, to look at reality from another position, to get above your own reality. I always use the metaphor of Baron von Munchausen. It's a story that this Baron, it's a myth, of course. He takes himself and his hair out of the water. It's impossible, of course, but that is what imagination can do for us. It can take us out of our own condition of living in reality and to look at ourselves. And that's why I said art is also in science, because a lot of scientists also, especially psychologists, sociologists, do this. They're giving you an imaginal position to look at yourself. It's very important. I'm against impact measuring. No, but I'm against it because it is used in a completely wrong way, I think, nowadays. So I really believe that there can be an impact. That's not what I mean. But nowadays, governments stimulate very much in the kind context of evidence-based policy, evidence-based research, etc., to measure the impact. And you can only measure the impact in that sense by quantifying. You have an event and you measure the moment before the event and after the event. And so that's the only thing how you can do this. And by doing this, you isolate very much the impact what an art event can have on culture, which is in the long term and is embedded. You can never measure the effect of seeing a theatre piece over 20 years. And I think this is very important, which is misses with all this impact discussion. But that doesn't mean that I think it's very important as an artist to think about your impact. You can, because a lot of artists, especially in this field of community art, have a completely wrong impact on what they do, because they step sometimes naive in the field and mess it up in a way that the outcome of some projects are even worse than when they started. So it's very important to think about what do you want to realize, and how do you want to realize a kind of impact. And I think to measure impact in a serious sense means that you really go into the fields, that you look at what is happening there as a researcher. Then I mean to measure impact. Look at what has happened, do in-depth interviews, etc., with people. But I think on the long run, to see the impact, you need to do what they call in sociological terms longitudinal research. That means that you do research over 20 years and ask people several times again, follow them, etc. And then you can talk about what is a real impact. Because culture is about embedding, it asks for time. And this is very important. Also because and this is also very interesting, I think, what is difficult to measure is that a very small thing can a very small or artistic idea which comes in and are you confronted with, can impact you for your whole life. So it is also in that sense very difficult to measure. I call it a singular moment, which can shift you completely, and this is almost immeasurable, because also in all those classical measure strategies, what they measure is not the impact. What they measure is what people can say that the impact is. So what they measure is a cognitive process, not what it does with your emotions, with your attitude, etc. It measures if you can be reflexive about the impact of. That's something completely different than real impact. I said already, a lot of artists step naive into the field and do things, and it can be very problematic. So first of all, I think it's very important for art schools to think about this practice and to even give courses in what can social problematics are, what is social cohesion about. There are different kinds of social cohesion, by the way, also. It can be a worse thing, it can be a good thing. That's the first thing what you need to know as an artist, for example, when you go in this social field. I think so. Education is for me very important in it. I always give one example, and I also forgot the name, but there is an artist in the 70s who went to in Chicago to a suburb to also to stimulate social cohesion in a highly criminal district it was at the moment, and he uses a classical methodology, interviewing cameras. He gave people in this neighborhood cameras, and he said to them, interview each other. And what they saw was that the suicide rate in this district at the moment he worked there decreased. So it went down. It was very good. But after a year, the project was finished. He was away, and the suicide rate doubled. So in the same context. So this means really, I think, and that's the main problem, I think, with all those community art projects. They are most of the time temporary. And this is a huge problem. So I think the first thing what an artist has to do is to think about it, what will happen here when I'm away? And how can I make things structural? So I believe also more and more in artists who take their work serious with the community and work there, for example, for 20 years. That can be one solution. Or that they think about how can I make tools that people with which I work can organize themselves, learn to work with those tools themselves, that they can get also the ownership of it to work with it. And this is very important, I think, and you can learn this at school. There are strategies to do this, but this is almost never done. I'm very ambivalent about this structural change which artists can bring in. I think when they only, and I see also, when they only work on the social level or on the level with other people, etc., they only solve the problem most of the time temporarily. Certainly when they work project-based. So I think it's very important when you go into such a project that you immediately try to work on on two levels. One level is just working with people, looking what is happening there, trying to get involved, trying to find also your autonomous, this is very important, your autonomous artistic tools to deal with the problem. But at the same time, you have to look at, and that's the second level, at the political level, what is happening there, what are structural problems which organize or which are the often the reason of why there is a poor neighborhood or why there is bad social cohesion, etc. And this political level is the most difficult one. In that sense, that again, I use an example to try to explain this. It's real. It was a master student who discovered it, who did research in the Netherlands about community art, and she found that one of our case students was an artist who worked in a district where he was asked to work. So he got money subsidized by the government, local government, and bureaucrats even. And what was interesting is that it was a neighborhood with a huge criminality rate, and he discovered while he was working with the people there that one of the main reasons that there was so high criminality was just that the street lighting was broken and it was not fixed. And then he tried to find out why is it not fixed, and then came out that it was the whole neighborhood was constructed and the housing was a kind of private-public corporation. So between governments and a private company, and the private company didn't want to solve the problem. It was responsible for the lighting, etc. At that moment, he started to discuss this. And that moment, a lot of bureaucrats were help, and they put the money literally out of the project, and it stopped. So this shows how complex it can be, because when you, of course, criticize the one who pays you to do this, you get in problems, and a lot of artists get at that moment in this position. So I think it's very important when you start such a project, you really start it autonomous. That means also that you do not it as in an assignment, but you do it at least in the first place you do it because you really think there is a problem which has to be solved, and you want to solve it as an artist, and you think you have the tools. That must be also the drive, because when you do it like that, you are much more political stronger also to convince, etc., to fight also at the same time at the structural level. And I think this is very important, to fight also on the structural level, to make there, and then you can have impact on the long run. I think make really structural changes. This can be also by, for example, in a classical world, by emancipating the people with which you work. So that means that you not only stimulate to live nice together in harmony, but that you also point to those people to serious structural political problems and help them to engage in this kind of political struggle. That's something completely else. And then you can also, I think, only have effects on the long run.